Hey everybody, welcome to Manna Moments. If you happened to listen in last week, we were talking about how we have a God who makes promises and who every single time keeps those promises. And this week, we want to focus in on when we're reading God's Word, how do we know whether or not a promise is ours to claim? If we were to turn to the New Testament and listen to some words that Paul wrote to Timothy, and Timothy was a young church leader Paul had discipled. And in 2 Timothy 2:15, Paul writes, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a workman who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth." As disciples of Jesus, we want that to apply to us. We want to be people who correctly handle the word of truth. And so when we're reading promises God's made, we want to stop and consider, is this a promise I can claim? And so we just want to, in these 5 or 6 minutes, quickly look at 3 questions that will help us determine that. And the first is this: what is the context? Because many promises were made to specific people at specific times and for a very specific purpose. They aren't made for just everybody to claim. Example, if we were to turn to Matthew 17 and we listen in on a conversation that Jesus and Peter are having, and it's tax season, and the tax collectors have been asking Peter, "Hey, does your teacher pay the taxes?" And Jesus has pulled Peter aside and said, "Hey, basically I'm the king and I'm exempt from taxes, but so as not to offend, go to the sea, cast in your hook, and the first fish you catch is going to have a coin for you to pay my taxes and your taxes." Well, obviously, that is not a promise that is made to everybody. That was Jesus talking to Peter. It doesn't mean that come tax season, all of us factorians run to Lake Allatoona looking to catch fish. We know that. Another example, if we were to turn to Luke 1, and God has sent his angel Gabriel to Mary, and Gabriel says to Mary, "Hey, you are going to have a son. And you're to name him Jesus. He's going to be the Son of the Most High." That promise is specific to Mary. You know, when I read that, obviously I'm not running out to the mailbox to put blue balloons out and the "It's a Boy" banner in my front yard. Those promises were very specific. But the good news is, even promises that weren't made to us were still recorded for us. You know, they may not be ours to claim, but they are ours to gain confidence and encouragement from. If I go back to that promise to Peter, even though I don't run to Bass Pro Shop, I can sit and I can dwell in that passage and come away knowing that my God cares about the details of my life. I can see my God can meet my needs. He can provide for me in ways I never would have imagined. I can see my God is sovereign over all of creation. I mean, he can command a fish to take a coin and bite a hook at a specific time. That is a God I can trust with the details of my life. So number 1, what's the context? Number 2, are there conditions? Some promises are conditional. And we bristle a little bit at that, I think because we're used to saying unconditional love, using those words together. So we want God's promises to all be unconditional. But some come with a condition. If we were to turn to Matthew 11, and this is a promise we love, where Jesus says, "Come, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." I mean, we love that promise. We want rest for our souls. But the condition is that we come to Jesus, that we are being in his presence. So if I say, I definitely want rest for my soul, I love that promise, but I don't have time to be with Jesus, then I'm forfeiting the reality of that promise in my life. And the good news with this is whenever God gives a condition, he also is the one that gives us the ability to meet that condition. He doesn't expect us just with our own strength and willpower to be able to do that. So the very condition, we ask God, help me to do that. And then the third question we ask is this actually a promise? Because when we read the Bible, it's one book, but it has different kinds of literature in it. There's books of prophecy and history and poetry, and books that are wisdom literature. And so one book that we sometimes get confused with is the book of Proverbs, because that's really a book of wise principles for living, not a book. It has promises in it, but primarily it's not promises. So when I'm reading the book of Proverbs and I come, for example, to Proverbs, I think it's 15:1, a gentle answer turns away wrath. That is not God promising me that if I always answer gently, nobody's going to get mad with me. That's just God telling me this is the wise way to live. This is what is typically true. I think another proverb that we sometimes treat like it's a promise is train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. That is not God promising that every godly parent will never have a child that rebels. We can get in trouble and get a little disillusioned with God if we turn principles into promises. So those three questions we want to ask when we're reading God's word. What is the context? Are there conditions? And is it actually a promise? Because we want to be people who wisely handle his word. It is filled with promises for us to claim. It is filled with other promises that aren't ours to claim, but are still ours to get encouragement from. So may we be a people who open up God's word frequently and who totally trust what he has to say to us. Until next week, may he continue just to give us a genuine, deep appetite for his word. And as we open it up, may we encounter him in genuine ways.